Ah, the Zelda timeline. That thing that is really not important, but it is. But it kind of is. But it's not. Because Nintendo really ultimately doesn't care. But it is though. Because that's how the games tie together. And it's a lot of fans really don't like when they don't tie together. It's not important though. But it is. But it's not. There was some kerfuffle a while back. I actually meant to make a video on it. I just didn't get around to it. You know, Nintendo was starting to update the timeline, and we could see that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have been added to the timeline, but they're not on the timeline. They're just kind of like listed independently, which, I mean, it's understandable. It was to be expected because, you know, they don't really seem to fit. They seem to follow from multiple they have elements from multiple timelines, and I know that is up for debate too. You know, some people have been able to say like, no, some of these other things you could all break it down and see that it's actually such and such. I really don't know. Ultimately, it's just more proof that the timeline really doesn't matter at all. But for some reason, I almost kind of expected them not to. Nintendo has officially placed Echoes of Wisdom. They have given it a definitive place on the timeline. Really just surprising. I don't know, they did it. We now know that Echoes of Wisdom takes place on the Downfall timeline. You know, Ocarina of Time was basically the split. There's the child timeline, and then the adult timeline is split into the hero is triumphant and the hero is defeated, which I never really got. I never really quite understood that. Like when I first learned about the split timeline, I was very unhappy. I was a teenager. I wasn't happy about it. I think it's weird, but I can get to a point. Time travel. Kid Link is one timeline, and then Adult Link is, or rather the absence of Adult Link is another timeline. I don't quite get the mechanics of it, but basically in Ocarina of Time, if Link doesn't win, that is a whole other timeline. It's actually like the most major of the timelines, you could argue. But like, why wouldn't you have alternate timelines from all of the different Zelda? A theoretical Link fails in a split from every game. I don't know, maybe in theory you could. Anyway, I always thought it was weird. I didn't really quite get it. I guess maybe just narratively it helped fit the older games in with the newer games. Whatever. Point is, Echoes of Wisdom takes place in the hero is defeated timeline, which makes a lot of sense because yeah, like hero defeated most of the early games. You know, Link between Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and then the Oracle games. A lot of like the early-ish games, they're all just kind of there. It just kind of like made sense to kind of lump them in together. And the order of these games, this branch of the timeline, you got Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, Oracles, Link Between Worlds, Triforce Heroes, and then Echoes of Wisdom takes place before the original Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link. So it's both very, very far in a major branch of the timeline, but it is also narratively, you know, it comes immediately before the first games in the entire series. And yeah, ultimately, I think the reason that they put it here is literally just because it was a convenient place to put it. Because again, the timeline never really matters. They didn't put it there because it has all of these links to everything else. It's really just because it fit. It was a place to put it where it didn't really interfere with anything else. And of course, the game does have a lot of ties to Ocarina of Time, which is cool, but it actually takes place really long after the events of Ocarina of Time. And, you know, I won't go into any story spoilers, but clearly, you know, it comes a little bit after Link Between Worlds and Triforce Heroes, but clearly it takes place very far in the future after those games. It really is a very isolated kind of standalone experience in a sense. And if you want just a slight bit more official timeline related info, you know, each game has its own little summary on the timeline. And with Echoes of Wisdom, the hero Link sets out to rescue Princess Zelda, who was captured by Ganon. Following a fierce battle, Link defeats Ganon, only to be swallowed up by an eerie rift It was as if he'd been stolen away. All across Hyrule, more mysterious rifts are forming and taking the people of Hyrule away. Nobody is safe. Not even the king himself and his advisors, who have also gone missing. Princess Zelda must set out on an adventure to save her father, the king of Hyrule, the people, and Link. And then, you know, this has got little descriptors, little labels on different parts of the timeline, and Echoes of Wisdom. Since it takes place right before the original Legend of Zelda, it's got the little Decline of Hyrule Kingdom. That's always been like a little, I don't know, just like a little label, a little piece of Hyrule history. There's the like Decline era, which I always thought was interesting. That's an aspect of like Zelda history I think I've always wanted to know more about, but I've just never really looked into it. Why is the original Zelda and then Adventure of Link, why is that considered like the decline of Hyrule? I don't know. That's interesting. I should ask a Zelda historian. And I also do, again, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I do have some questions about like Echoes of Wisdom preceding The Legend of Zelda. Just kind of like questions about the, just kind of the nature of a certain element of the world. I don't quite know how you go from this one to that one, but yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Because it never matters. And I can complain all day about that fact and go on my huge tirade about why it should matter and the story is important and all that stuff. But, I don't know. In this case, it's hard to complain too much because Echoes of Wisdom did end up getting a pretty good story. Even if the placement in the timeline doesn't really matter that much, it's kind of just a throwaway position. It still ended up getting some good lore stuff in there. So, yeah, I'm pretty satisfied in that department. The last thing to mention is, you know, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is separate. And so that, again, I almost made a video just about that. But in that image that like I can't remember where it was, but Nintendo displayed the timeline somewhere and people saw it. And in that case, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were separate from the other games. But in that one image, even those two games weren't linked together. And that was funny because of elements of the story between Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, and how they link together. Again, no spoilers, but it was funny to see that they weren't linked together. Here they are, though, finally, officially. Now we know for sure, canonically, Tears of the Kingdom does come after Breath of the Wild. Woof. What a relief. I was getting worried that Tears of the Kingdom took place on the hero forgets to brush his teeth and puts his left sock on first one morning timeline.